It's great to see so many people attending today. I'm going to go through some housekeeping with you. You can see on the slide in front of you that we've got some aims and objectives for the day, which I'll just let you read at your leisure. And then I'm going to outline what the plan is for the rest of the 2-hour event. It's absolutely fabulous to see so many people have attended. I've got someone else coming. Hold on a second. Okay. So I'm Carol Reffin. I took over from Michaela Wright, who was the previous head. She was a previous chair. I'm getting a repetition of my voice. I hope that's not happening with everyone. And she did an absolutely fantastic job as chair for 2 or 3 years. So I know she can't come today, but I would like to thank her on behalf of the steering group for her really, really excellent contribution. She's going to be a very hard act to follow, but I shall certainly do my best. Housekeeping today, we'd like you all to, when the presentations start, to turn off your microphones, just to ensure that we don't get too many distractions going on. The whole event is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to go onto the RCSLT website and access the event there. So for those of you that have missed it or have to go halfway through, that's absolutely fine. You can catch up later. The other thing to say is that obviously we've got quite a few people. You're very welcome to keep your cameras on throughout, but if anybody wants to turn their video off, that is completely acceptable. I'll be checking things on the conversation line, so I will be turning my video off from time to time. So feel free to make yourself nice and comfortable. Okay, so I'm just going to outline the day. So next slide, please. Okay, so we've got 2 one-hour sessions, which are going to be broken up with a 15-minute break. So the first session, as you can see in front of you, we're going to have Della Monet from the Royal College opening and doing a formal welcome for everybody. Then that's followed by Derek from the RCSLT giving us a really valuable update from what's been going on. I think we all recognise we've come through a very challenging time, which has been challenging and rewarding for different reasons for our profession. So we'll have that update from Derek. Then we're going to be joined by Ali Tempest and her team from De Montfort University to give us an update about how things have been progressing for students. After those 2 presentations, there'll be a 10-minute space for question and answers. So feel free to pop down some questions in the chat line and I can try and look at those before we get to that session. And then obviously if we have time, we'll answer everyone's questions. If we don't, we will come back to you later on and address those questions. Then we have a 15-minute break, and in the 15-minute break, we're going to introduce an interactive activity, which I think I will get Kaylee probably just to explain during that break period. And it's going to be an interactive thing, which you don't have to do, but if you have some comments, we're going to give you a sentence starter, which is cultural inclusivity means. And then if you want to add comments, you can add them on it's like a bit like a whiteboard and you just tap in your comments, but I'll get Kaylee to outline that during the break. So you can do that while you're having your comfort break and a cup of tea. And then coming up this afternoon, the next session, for the next hour, it will be led by Vikas, who is our deputy chair, and he will lead you through the second hour. And the focus for the second hour will be inclusivity and diversion. And that will be led by Padrigan from the Royal College of Speech Language Therapy, and then we also have a presentation from SLT Time, and that is from a lady called Taiba, so she's going to join us for that. And then we have the question and answer session again for 10 minutes, and then the final close for the end of the day. So I'm just checking through my notes. I think I've covered everything. I'm going to hand you over to Della in one moment. If anybody has any questions at the moment, just feel free to use the chat line throughout and we'll try and address those as we can. Sit back and enjoy a very lovely 2 hours. It's great to reconnect with so many people. I'm delighted that you've all attended. And I'm going to pass you to Della. Now, Della is our current chair for the Royal College, but this is her final formal event with us. And I think everybody would agree that she's an absolutely fantastic ambassador for the Royal College. She's done a brilliant job as chair. We're going to miss you greatly, Della, and your contribution is really valued. And I know that you're going to start us now. So I'm going to hand you over to Della.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everybody, for asking me to open today. As you said, it is my final event, and it does seem very fitting that my final event is where I started, which is in the East Midlands, and where I have spent my entire career amongst my East Midlands colleagues. A little bit about me, for those of you that I haven't met. I graduated a long time ago in 1986, and my first job was in Leicester for 3 years. And then I moved for a fixed term post to central Nottinghamshire. The fixed term turned out to be for the rest of my career. I stayed there. I had a head of service job since 2000. I managed to do my PhD. If you look at the next slide, you'll see sort of my progression through my career to me now as chair of the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists. All of my career has mainly been in adult learning disabilities, and that's where I've been really passionate about engaging, involving, hearing the voices of people with learning disabilities and their carers. But I've also started working within allied health professions now. About 10 years ago, I took a sort of lead AHP role within CAMS and learning disabilities, and that got extended to adult mental health and mental health services for older people. And over the last 2 years, I've been the Associate Director for Allied Health Professions within Nottinghamshire Healthcare. So that's my current job, and Nottinghamshire Healthcare covers forensics, community and mental health services. And as I already said, really, my passion has been this engagement, inclusion and involvement. And no matter what I do, that has been absolutely key to me. So whether it's been people with a learning disability, their family and carers, whether it's been my speech and language therapy team when I was head of service, or whether it's the allied health professions that I now lead, it's all about hearing the voice of those seldom heard. And it's also engagement, inclusion, involvement that brought me to the Board of Trustees. So if we could look at the next slide, please. The Board of Trustees is all around governance and strategy. It sets the strategic direction and ensures that the Royal College is meeting those. So our strategic areas for the last 3 years have been these. So you can read them yourselves, but you can see that quality services, active influencing and being an innovative organisation have been the key threads of the work that the board and the staff at the college have been working on. But it's a membership organisation, so it isn't about the staff and the college or the board doing this work. It's about us all doing this work, all of us working together. A membership organisation means we work with you and as well as working for you. And nothing could be truer for 2020. We can all say 2020 has been an extremely different year for us all. But these focus areas have remained the key drivers for RCSLT, whether that's been around the pandemic or whether that has been around the anti-racism work. As a membership organisation, the needs of our members and our service users have been front and centre. Next slide, please. And of course, 2020 is our 75th anniversary year and was supposed to be a massive year of celebration with lots of events planned. The activity has continued because, of course, it is still our 75th anniversary, but we've had to be very mindful of the tone of those celebrations and had to make some changes. So what I'm going to share with you now are a few of the things that we've still got planned till the end of the year celebrating our 75th. So next slide. You'll know about the hashtag SLT Appreciation campaign that started in September. That has stood in for the awards, and the purpose of that has been to celebrate and to inspire the profession in these very difficult times, a sort of uplifting activity really, and it's been very well received. There was a load of tweets for those of you that are on Twitter, and there'll be more about that in the bulletin articles in December. There's been themes for every month, and the last two themes are science, research and innovation for November, and December is the future. And really, college want to know if you have any plans that you can share, or if you've got any other ideas about how we can celebrate our 75th anniversary in these different times. And there's more to come. So next slide, please. In October, we recorded a meeting with Her Royal Highness the Countess of Wessex. You can see her in the bottom line. And that recording will be shared in December with members. It was part of the hashtag SLT appreciation, and some key members were brought in from the profession who have been absolutely key in delivering either around the anti-racism agenda or around the pandemic agenda. And it's a chance to hear their stories and hear what they've been up to, but also to celebrate what we've achieved. I think a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate how active speech and language therapists have been during this time. Next slide, please. The December bulletin will include a history column by Joyce Stansfield, and will include a lot more detail about the hashtag SLT appreciation feature. So look out for those. And then also the next slide just shows you some of the merchandise that we've still got for sale. I'm wearing my badge here proudly. You can still buy those, and that's the details of how to purchase those. So my final slide is about the virtual AGM and the handover. So hopefully you all saw in your bulletin this month the details about AGM. The date is Wednesday the 9th of December. The time is 2 till 3. And as I said, all the details are in the bulletin, and you will, as all members will get some emailed information prior to the date. It isn't just the AGM. I mean, the AGM is a great opportunity to hear about what the RCSLT has been up to. And don't forget, it's almost before the pandemic. So it's at the period up until March 2020 is this sort of AGM timescale. So there'll be a presentation all about what we've been up to from the trustees annual report. But also it's the handing over of the chain of office, and you can see me in the background here, and I'm wearing the chain of office which every chair has, while Mary is greeting Her Royal Highness. And Mary will be the incoming chair and the recipient of the chain of office on the 9th of December. It's great because Mary Heritage will be known to so many of you, because she too is a long-standing East Midlands SLT, and she currently she's in Derbyshire, she works there. So, and I'm also got great pleasure to introduce you all to Mary at the end of this meeting, and she's going to close this hub event with a few words. So my final thing to say is it has been a real pleasure and privilege and an honour to serve on the Board of Trustees. And I may be stepping down and handing over, but I am not stepping back as a member. Engagement, inclusion and involvement are the golden threads that have run through my career. And for all of us as members, engagement, inclusion and involvement are absolutely key, and those will continue to be the running through my career as we move forward. So I really hope you enjoy this meeting this morning. It's a great opportunity for us to come together across the East Midlands and share some good practice and connect, and is a very important sort of structure within RCSLT to get us all engaged. So thank you for inviting me. I'm going to hand back over to Carol now.
Thank you very much, Dana. That was really interesting and lovely to see those photos of you growing and developing through your career. That was a real bonus. And I just feel very lucky that you have been part of the East Midlands too. So I'm going to pass you on to our next speaker, who is going to be Derek Munn from the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapy.
Good morning, colleagues. Delighted to be with you. You'll all be aware by now that amongst the interesting things of doing these virtual meetings is that when you're giving a presentation, you can't see the people that you're speaking to. So from a speech language therapy perspective, there's no non-verbal feedback, so I rely on people. I can't see facial expressions. I've no idea how I'm going down, so I'm just going to carry on for the 20 minutes. The other thing to say in these technological times is that my computer is furiously attempting to shut down and do an update, and I am furiously telling it not to. But if I disappear, you'll know why. My name's Derek Munn. I'm the Director of Policy and Public Affairs at the Royal College. Carol gave me a very interesting brief in 20 minutes. She said, we want to know who does what at the Royal College with photos, but you don't need to tell people what the Royal College does. I'm like, okay, that's going to be interesting. I will just briefly run through who the key people are and what the key contact points are, and you'll have those in the slides afterwards to make use of. But I'm going to use the bulk of the 20 minutes to hang off that introduction. What are the big live issues that the Royal College is working on right now, which hopefully will be of interest to you. But here's who's who. So many of you will know Kamini, of course. She's from Nottingham, so she also identifies strongly with the East Midlands. In terms of the way the organisation is structured, I think the key thing is what it says at the bottom. Action and planning is across the teams. There's very little that we do in a siloed structure. All of the issues that I'm going to touch upon in the next 15 minutes are issues that we would work together between the different teams, and of course with relevant members, expert members and members across the country. So it's a bit artificial to see it in the organogram structure. But Judith, who is Kamini, of course, is herself a former speech and language therapist, practicing speech and language therapist, NHS manager, and expert in bilingualism. And she was in the Department of Health in the late 90s, put together the first race equality strategy for the NHS at that time. Judith, the Director of Professional Development, comes from a background of being a senior NHS manager in North London. Her clinical specialism is in adult acute. And the Professional Development Department covers, amongst other things, all of the professional guidance and standards and competencies and everything for each of the clinical areas and the different levels. The research evidence team, who are tasked with keeping on top of what research is emerging in all of the areas that we work in. Is it good enough? Are we to it? Are we making sure that people have access to relevant journals? The outcome measures work, which many of you will be aware of, which is about using TOMS as a measure and other related strands of work to be able to measure the impact that speech and language therapy interventions have. The work around CPD and learning, so all of our e-learning resources, our learning journeys, our e-learning, all of that, and the inquiries team, which is very relevant, comes under there. Rachel, the Director of Communications and Engagement, she joined us from the Royal College of Nursing, so she has very interesting perspectives from a very large professional body to a relatively small one. And Rachel looks after all of our media work, social media, the ongoing improvements to the website, and all of our events, which in normal times we have a lot of face-to-face events. Now those currently are online. And Rachel is also responsible for member engagement and improving the service that you get as paying members of the Royal College. There's me. My job is the outward facing stuff. So my department looks after the political relationships with the 4 governments of the UK. It's important to say we're very devolution friendly and everything we do is done ×4. And I myself lived in Scotland for over 20 years and was in the government in Scotland, so I'm devolution friendly. All of the external relationships that we have with Unite as the trade union, with other professional bodies in the allied health sector and more widely, but also with all of the service user organisations, large and small, with whom we co-produce our lobbying and influencing work. My department works on legislation and policy, and I'll touch on some of that later on. That relationship with service users and the devolved nations. And finally, Karen, the Director of Finance and Corporate, she looks after the membership system and the organisation's money and all the operations, and she'll shortly be taking over too as the company secretary. So I was asked to give you a quick structure with photos. There it is. I hope you find it useful for future reference. And just when you're seeing things in bulletin or going, I think it can sometimes be easy. Obviously I'm a member of lots of organisations, and it's sometimes easy to go in the abstract. Oh, the college, the Royal College, it's people, and there are some of the people, and hopefully that helps you in your interactions with this going forward. So the next thing I was asked to do was say, who do you contact? So this is possibly the dullest slide I've ever done, but hopefully will be a useful reference for you. I have to say that for most purposes, the general inquiries line is the place to go. They're always staffed, and they're very skilled at both making sure your query gets directed to the right place, but also chasing up and making sure that you get a response. So do use the inquiries line for most purposes. If it is a direct press query, you can go straight to the press office. And obviously, if it relates to the hub, then Kaylee is the person to contact about that. But if you do know someone, so look, at the end of this presentation, you'll get my contact details. If you need something from Royal College and you don't know where to go, and mine is the only email you can find, just email me. I will not mind. I will just pass it on to the right person. And I know that the same is true of anybody else in the Royal College. So never think, oh, I'm not sure who I should contact. Just send it to whoever you know, and we'll take it from there. Okay. Having mentioned that the work that we do is done across teams and across the organisation, I've slightly artificially put my key issues under the headings of the different teams, but it doesn't really go there. So professional development, they probably have the lead here. But in telling you about 2020 and about where we are right now, I thought I might begin with something called COVID-19. And like, obviously for you in all of your working lives and personal lives, 2020 has been dominated by COVID-19 and SARS-CoV-2, but the same is true of the RCSLT as an organisation. I'm picking up some of the area. I think we went through several phases, as I'm sure you did too. So we had that initial phase from March, probably through till about Easter, which was essentially about crisis response. Yeah, members were being redeployed, members were being put in situations where they needed protective equipment. Nobody knew what the presentation and treatment was going to be. People were having to work very fast to develop the pathway in acute care, and we were trying to support all of that. At the same time, there was an immediate issue around students and around placements. There was also the issue for people in the independent sector and people who worked in school settings who all of a sudden couldn't do it at all and had to switch to remote. So like you, we've worked as fast as we can all year to keep up on all of this and picking out some of the things. Clearly, in the middle of all of this, there is a novel pathology called COVID-19 and a novel care pathway, which is therefore developing around that. So the first thing we had, of course, was around intubation, and laryngeal damage and voice, but also some of the, sadly, colleagues who are expert in palliative care and all sorts of things were immediately going on there. Obviously, you then get a rehabilitation phase, and now we have the focus on COVID, or what I believe is called post-COVID syndrome. There is a debate going on at NICE right now about what the name is going to be, but post-COVID syndrome is what I'm hearing. And that is still emerging, both on, yes, we've, I've mentioned voice, but we know that there's cognitive, and we know that there's all sorts of other challenges. So the first area, which is going to continue to be live, is the COVID-19 pathway. Other key issues that we're focusing on, redeployment, which obviously was massive in the first phase. Now, somebody at NHS England said to me back in April, there's no such thing as misdeployment in a crisis. And I get that point, but we also had to say, look, speech and language therapists have particular professional skills, self-evidently around communication, but also on the swallowing side. Even in the middle of a crisis, don't you think it would be best to redeploy people in ways that make best use of what they have to offer professionally? In this second wave, there's a lot less redeployment, and actually Vicky Ford, the Children's Minister, has specifically said there should be no redeployment of SLTs and others working as SEND. That, of course, means that some colleagues in acute and intensive care are not getting the support that they got the first time. So it cuts both ways. There's also massive work across the 4 nations around the rehab pathway and adjusting that. And that's not just people who have been touched by COVID-19, it's also stroke and all the other areas that, you know, people who were in the system before COVID-19, who presented or did not present during COVID-19, and how we adapt the rehab pathway going forward. And of course, telehealth and remote working, because loads of speech and language therapy that was previously done face-to-face is now being done remotely. We do not have an evidence base in many cases as to which of those things is evident, you know, has evidence of outcome. So we're having to do that as we go as well, and make the case. You know, Matt Hancock said in the summer in a speech that in future teleconsultation will be the norm. Actually, what we hear on the ground is that service users are increasingly expecting face-to-face again, and been an issue again, particularly an issue for colleagues working in the school setting and on the children's side. When is it appropriate to insist on face-to-face? When is that not safe? When do we do it remotely? All of that. The last area has been around PPE, which again was a big issue in the spring. This time around, what I'm hearing is that protective equipment is available in greater quantity on the ground. We are therefore saying safety first. There are 2 big issues for us in PPE. The first is around aerosol generating procedures, and our view that based on scientific evidence, dysphagia procedures, inducing cough, etc., also other things that we may be involved in, like nasogastric, generate aerosol and should therefore have the highest appropriate level of PPE. We are still in an ongoing discussion with the system around that, and we're not going to give up on it because we think it's important for the future. The second area of PPE, which is particularly relevant to us, has been around clear face masks and the provision of clear face coverings to support, yes, obviously people from the deaf community, but other people as well for whom that's an appropriate support. And again, it's an ongoing struggle to get appropriately safe, tested, quality, transparent face coverings routinely out there and in the system. Okay, that's COVID-19. I'm going to have to go like an express train, but I always do. The second bit, I just wanted to mention, there's a whole world of professional development, but I think something that for those of you who are interested will be particularly important is dysphagia competencies at undergraduate level. Just to be aware that we are now involved in a pilot with Health Education England, which is likely to lead to dysphagia competence being routinely done at pre-reg level. And that's going to be a big change for how people graduate in the next couple of years and going forward. Okay, moving on. Engagement and communications. So I've chosen to put 2 issues under this heading, again, rather arbitrarily. I'm wondering, Kaylee, if you press again, whether that logo will appear. But the first is, oh no, it doesn't. Oh, never mind. We thought we had a logo, but we don't. Communication Access UK. Some of you will be aware that we've been working for several years now, developing a communication access symbol, a kind of blue badge, which should have appeared, which will sit alongside, we hope, the wheelchair and the ear and the eye. We did a lot of market testing because I have to say personally, I wasn't sure there would be a market for another blue badge, desirable as that is, to indicate communication need. Actually, there is. I was wrong. The take-up and the market is potentially huge. And we have now formally launched the communication access symbol, the standards that go with it, the e-learning, the accreditation. Since we launched it with Mikura, our president, on the 12th of November, over 600 organizations and individuals have already signed up. I think my favorite is GCHQ, the spying center. It'll be very interesting to see them do their communication skills training. Strong engagement, for example, from the retail sector and from the insurance sector. And you know, if you look at the website and the e-learning and some of the service user stories there, they're very powerful tools. So we're delighted to be able to, oh, there you go. Thank you, Claire. We're delighted to be able to do something positive amidst the ongoing challenges. The second thing I've just put under that heading is anti-racism. Now, Padraig's going to speak to you later in the morning in more depth, so just very briefly, we have had a long-term concern with equality and diversity in the profession itself and in the provision of services by the profession. And we had a whole work strand around gender, around ethnicity, around disability, looking across all of the equality strands. The challenge posed by Black Lives Matter, and it has to be said, the very insistent and correct demands of RCSLT members of colour, people of Black and Asian heritage, back in the spring, very clear what they expected their professional body to do. And we have responded by saying, okay, the equality and diversity work which we already had, we accept that this needs to be overlaid by an explicit orientation to active anti-racism. And we are seeking to embed that in all that we do. And I know that following a letter from Simon Stevens in July, there's an expectation on NHS trusts to do likewise. Okay, next. Very quickly in my own area, the service user survey. So this is something that we've had a long-term ambition to do, and we feel is particularly important to support the influencing we're going to need to do. As we move forward, what you saw yesterday, Rishi Sunak said 3 billion extra for the NHS in England. We believe some of that is going to go on healthcare assistance, but you'll know at local level that everybody's pitching in and everybody wants more resources and there's only a limited cake. So the visibility of speech and language therapy and the evidence and stories that show the benefit of funding speech and language therapy are going to be critical going forward. But also service users, both parents and young people and adult users of SLT, have been saying to us through their representative organisations, we have got things that we want to say. We have got stories that we want to tell, both about the benefit of the speech therapy that we received, but also what happened when we didn't get it. So the service user survey is now available. What I'm trying to do with it is role model inclusive communication, particularly in the context of the communication symbol. So the service user survey is proactively available in every accessible format we can think of. There's a talking map, there's aphasia friendly, there's support materials in Makaton, there's support materials in BSL. Say, look, this is what an accessible communication accessible project can look like. Already, in the first couple of weeks, literally hundreds, we're knocking up towards 300 parents have already come in, and boy, have they got some views to share on speech and language therapy. We've also got some very powerful adult stories. One of the very first was from a person with aphasia who made use of the support thing to tell his own story of speech and language therapy and aphasia. And I can already see these are going to be so powerful as stories for our influencing going forward. So please, please, please do disseminate the service user survey through your networks and encourage people to participate. Mental health is a key area, mental capacity, and have me back another time and I'll give you more detail on these issues. We're working right now on a bill that's in Parliament where we're trying to get prescribing rights extended to SLT and other professions. It's going to be a long shot, but we're trying to get it done. The next bill in Parliament is around domestic violence, and we are making the case for the guidance on that to take account of the known links between abuse, speech, language, communication. We're very pleased that Public Health England guidance on early years has now been rolled out across the country, giving government support for explicit encouragement to jointly commission children's services locally. And of course, there's also the wee thing called Brexit, which is coming up in a few weeks' time. We obviously, as a profession, are less affected by the overseas workers because of the language requirement, although there is an issue around AHP, as I understand it. We are working to make sure that dysphagia medicine, food, modified texture food, that those supply chains keep working. And there are also some issues for members in Kent and in Northern Ireland around the cross-border issues. So we're also involved in that. Going on to the last one, because I have 0 minutes left. Hot right now, well, membership queries is always hot, but it's important to know that there is a team there to deal with all of your queries about your membership, about change of category, about trouble with payment, all of that stuff. We're also going to be asking you in the next few months to complete an updated member profile on the membership system, which will include equality data and will include data about your job. Please do it when it comes, because what it will enable us to do in an anonymised fashion is do something which doesn't exist anywhere else, which is know how many Band 7s there are, know how many people are working in learning disability, know how many people are employed in the independent sector. So we can be the resource which doesn't currently exist on solid data about the shape of the workforce in the UK. So it's really important to have advocacy work that you fill in that workforce profile when we ask you to in the coming months. That's my 20-minute spin. There are my contact details. There's the Twitter handle. I hope, Carol, that in some way fitted the bill that you set me, and I'll be delighted to take questions both in the 10 minutes we have later or offline later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. Your timekeeping was superb. I found that really helpful to get that update, and I think everybody would agree that college really risen to the challenge of COVID times, and I feel that I've been really well supported from the college, and I think you've adapted brilliantly to different ways of working. So I found that very helpful, and obviously, as you said, any questions we can take a bit later, because I've now got to introduce the next presenter. Our next presenter is from De Montfort University, and I'm expecting it to be Alison Tempest, hopefully. So you're very welcome. So now you've just joined us, and over to you. Thanks, Ali.
Hi, Carol. Thank you. Sorry, everything dropped out. I just dropped off the system, so I had to come back in.
That's really lovely to see you. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. So my name's Ali Tempest. I'm Associate Professor of the Speech and Language Therapy Programme at De Montfort University. And thanks ever so much for inviting us along today to talk about our work and what we've been doing since March. I'm going to start just to give you a little bit of a context for us working in higher education. And then I'm going to pass on to my colleague Lisa Morgan, who's the programme lead, and Sam Littlefair. So it's a little bit of a fast whiz through, but we thought it would be a really nice way to introduce a few more people other than myself. And we're going to tell you more detail about the work we've been doing. So we currently run one programme now, which is our 3-year undergraduate speech and language therapy programme. And we've got just over 100 students studying with us across those 3 years. Our last cohort of the 3.5-year course, which many people I think will be aware of, graduated last February. So the beginning of the last academic year was very intense, and there was a high demand on placement capacity, as we had around 70 final year students. And we were lucky in that when COVID hit, almost half of those students had completed final placement and were working towards their final assessments and vivas. Our second years and third year student placements were almost finished, and so the majority of students finished their year online and have progressed, and Lisa will tell you more about the online. We had a sizable number of students who couldn't progress for various reasons and had not completed enough placement hours, and so for those we've had to prioritise and do some problem solving and make some significant adjustments, but everyone is on track now. So I'll just take the opportunity to introduce our team. You might recognise some of them. After a busy year last year and some resource challenges, I'm really pleased to say that we've got a fantastic, excellent team of about 7.2 FTE, I think it works out. And between us, we design and manage and deliver the programme with support from our external colleagues for some specialist teaching and, of course, a huge amount of support for placement delivery. Many of you, as I say, recognise the faces, but the newest of the bunch, I suppose, is Sam, Sam Littlefair, who joined us in July during lockdown. She wins the big prize for that, having never been to a real live team meeting yet. And our other most recent member of the team is Alison Druitt, who joined us for 3 days a week in December last year. So really proud of this team. Their commitment, passion and drive is second to none, which has been shown certainly over the last year. So next slide, please. So like many organisations, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our response in response to COVID. And so since March, our response and the response from the university has been very immediate. As Derek said, a kind of crisis response, really. The university impressively rolled into action very quickly to ensure its students and staff were safe, and we moved into the first lockdown. We then came out of lockdown, and it really has been very much getting business back to normal, albeit the campus is open, albeit in a kind of reduced form. So the business is we're running. So our duty of care from speech and language therapy really has been to look after the students. And these students, as you'll know, work incredibly hard and have invested considerable financial and emotional time to study their chosen career. And we had to look at protecting their student experience, their personal investment, and of course, ensure that the standard of their education was not compromised, so that the pipeline really of speech and language therapists moving into the workforce was uninterrupted, because of course the prediction is that if we interrupt that pipeline, that's going to have big impacts on workforce later on. And of course, in doing that adaptation, we still have to meet HCPC standards. So as I said, we're pleased that most of our final year students graduated and many have started first jobs. Sadly for them, they were not able to celebrate their achievements in a live graduation ceremony, but we did have an online one. And we were really pleased and proud of our students, really, how professional they've been, incredibly supportive of us, and drawing on and developing new skills themselves, which we think they will bring into placement and the workforce. So the response really to the pandemic has been very much a partnership, working together to support the sustainability, as I say, of the workforce. And very quickly there was an abundance of guidance from the HCPC, Health Education England, placement partners, and of course Royal College, who have been absolutely brilliant at giving key recommendations very quickly about placements, and particularly placements in 2021, which has provided us with some flexibility on how we achieve those placements in the current climate. So key to that really has been enabling us to consider this broader range of learning activities, and Sam will tell you more about this as we're playing that out, with a minimum of 25% practice placement, and working with all speech and language therapists, encouraging speech and language therapists to support 25 days of practice-based learning per year per whole-time equivalent. So that's really a call to action to ask for support. So over to Lisa really now to talk more about the moving online with the teaching.
Hi everybody. I can't actually see the presentation, so I'm going to make this up marginally as we go along. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit around our kind of teaching and learning approach for this academic year moving forward. I think it's really important to start off from that point of view with students at the centre. And I think it's really important for everybody actually to recognise that our students have kind of got lots on their plates. So many of our students have got caring responsibilities, either from a kind of parental point of view where they've been spending lots of time homeschooling, or their opportunities to study are influenced by children at home having to self-isolate, often on a kind of revolving door basis. We also have a lot of students who are living with vulnerable family members. So that dynamic of very active caring responsibilities alongside their studies, which are always intensive at the best of times, is something that's really important for us to bear in mind. There are also lots of practical considerations. A great deal of our learning is online, and for many of our students this can be challenging in terms of access to technology, broadband bandwidth, having lots of people at home all needing to use technology at the same time, lots of those sort of practical aspects, even as far as where they're going to live this year. Can they still stay at home, or should they be in Leicester? And the dynamics of also, lots of our students kind of living alone. The well-being aspect is something that's really crucial. Obviously for all of us, this is unprecedented and can place some challenges in relation to our well-being. But for our students as well, there's lots of issues around uncertainty about what are things going to look like, how are things going to feel, what will placement be, and how will this influence my long-term aspiration of becoming an SLT. Will this mean that actually I'm not going to be as equipped as I need to be in order to kind of come out and get employment in the way that we want? And also we have actually had some students who have had COVID, so there is that dynamic as well that we are also aware of. So a really complex picture for our students. May I have the next slide, please? So one of the things that we have done, and we decided this actually sort of quite early on in the grand scheme of things, is that we would be taking a blended learning approach. And this has been a really steep learning curve for us all. We went online just when everything went into first lockdown. And I think it's safe to say that for staff and students, we're all in a position where we can pop on our any job applications that we have those essential transferable skills of being flexible, creative and adaptable. Definitely that's a kind of COVID thing, I think. So very steep learning curve for us in terms of how we develop learning opportunities for students, and also for them in terms of the best way to access that. So we have across each year group a small amount of face-to-face contact on campus. That varies. First years have had the most, third years have had the least, based on probably the social support networks that we thought students would have available to them. But it's still not very much. Students aren't even coming in once a week for face-to-face. So the vast majority of their learning is online, and that's either taking place asynchronously, so they can choose to do that at a time that is convenient to them. And that might be through things like pre-recorded lectures. It might be tasks, learning tasks that they're doing. It might be doing some group work. It might be doing some reading, various different things. But that's it's online, but they can do that at a time that is convenient to them. And then we have some online learning timetables activities, which take place in a virtual classroom, which is a little bit like these kinds of meetings. But we can also do some things like use breakout rooms, get students to write collectively on a whiteboard that everybody can see, and various other kind of aspects to that. But coming to grips with the technology has been definitely that very, very steep learning curve. So across that learning, we are supporting that by increased personal tutoring, recognising the challenges that our students face. And we're also gaining, wherever we can, some regular feedback about what's working and what's working less well, so that we can try to make this as positive an experience as possible. I think one of the interesting things is that across our diverse student population, some people love some things and other people find exactly the same thing much less positive. So we do get a lot of variation across the way. We've identified a range of positives around online learning. So some of the things that maybe we thought about trying for a while and had never had the time to get used to or try out, we've had to do that. So there are definitely some tools that we'll take forward that are really positive around how we can structure some learning for students, around some new ways of creating ways to work together and engagement from that point of view. And certainly for some students, that flexibility of not having to come onto campus 9 to 5 at least 3 days a week, and to choose at least partly when they do some of their learning has been really beneficial from that point of view. So there are some kind of positives. There are definitely some challenges. It is immensely time consuming for everybody. And That lack of personal contact is challenging. Just as Derek mentioned, the notion of teaching when you actually can't see people's faces is certainly something which I'm not sure we'll ever get used to from that point of view. And it's also really difficult to get a really efficient sense of how well students are understanding what it is we're doing. But we're trying to make the most of positives, and we're trying to focus all of our teaching on learning to make sure that students can meet their learning outcomes. It's different. There are some things which feel very different, but we're very focused on providing a range of opportunities, whether they're live or recorded or online in a different format, that really ensure that students are covering what they need to cover in ways that are really supportive to their learning. And additionally, we've made some adaptations to assessment methods. We've reduced how many exams we've got, and we've turned some assessments more to kind of assignment-based approaches. So all in all, lots of changes, but we are continuing to work in term 2, and our students have done an absolutely amazing job in adapting to what has been complex living and learning situations, and it's been an incredible testament at how well students have responded to these kind of significant challenges. So that's me done. I'm going to hand over to Sam, I think.
Sorry, slight delay, I muted myself. So yes, I'm Sam Littlefair and I am the Deputy Placement Lead at DMU. So I thought I'd give you a bit of an overview about our placement opportunities for this academic year. So if you put the next slide on. So we'll start by saying what's different for our students, and actually, as Lisa's already touched on, a lot has changed for our students and a lot has changed for their placements as well. So the first year students usually go on a care home placement and a school placement where they deliver an ICANN early talk boost programme, and then a learning disability placement. We've had to change the care home placement. As you'll be aware from the media, care homes have been hugely affected by COVID. So we've substituted the physical placement with a virtual placement. So our first year students are doing virtual sessions with residents in care homes and in day centres for the elderly. And that's had some challenges, but some positives as well, as people in care homes are facing quite a lot of isolation at the moment. We're hoping that the schools placement and the learning disability placement can go ahead in May, so hopefully that will look quite similar. So a bit of a mixed picture for first years, some things that have changed and some things that have stayed the same. The next slide, please. So this is how it's looking for our second year students. So we've had a really great innovative approach to our term 1 placements. We didn't want to send our students out early on as we were anticipating that second wave, which unfortunately did become a reality. So this term, our students in the second year have been engaging in this online indirect practice-based learning, and a huge thank you to all the clinicians across the East Midlands who've helped us to put together this approach for our students. We're not even halfway through this opportunity at the minute, and even as we speak today, some of our students are engaging in those online placement activities today. And the feedback so far, both from clinicians and from students, has been that this online case-based discussions and activities has been really useful so far. And as Lisa said, some of the things around COVID changes are going to be things we keep because they've been great, and maybe some things have been more challenging and we might go back to the old way. But I definitely think this online placement-based learning is a keeper. It's been going really well so far. After Christmas, our second years will go back out into a normal placement, whatever that looks like for our services. So some of it will still be largely telehealth, and some of it may be going into face-to-face placements. And term 2 will look much more like our normal placements, where they collect data about a client and they complete a Viva assessment at the end of placement in the university as well. Okay, next slide. In the second year, students also have a dysphagia placement. So as Derek touched on, trying to get our undergraduate students to have some dysphagia experience is something that all universities and RCSLT are working on. and really excited to be involved in that work going forward. But at DMU, our students do get that undergraduate experience. All our students have dysphagia experience, and that's in the form of a 2-day dysphagia placement, and that will continue as normal this year. So our students will go out in peers for 2 days of dysphagia placement. Next slide. And our final year placement looks the same as it always has, which is good, because when everything's changing, it's nice to have something which is just the same. So it's a 4-day placement, 3 days when they're in your clinic with you, whether that be virtually or face-to-face, where they do placement activities and they are supervised by you in a traditional way. And day 4 was a project day. And this is something which we've been doing for a few years here at DMU, where the students have a day which is unsupervised, but they engage in activities which are beneficial for you as a service and also for them. So this kind of come from feedback from clinicians around that huge to-do list that we have, where there's lots of things we'd love to do if only we had time. And we realise that our students are in a really good position to offer that. So project days can be things like developing resources, presentations, looking at evidence base and collating that. So there's lots of great activities that our students are engaging with. And our final year students, again, will go out after Christmas. Okay, next slide. So there's lots of new considerations for this year. So we're trying to get all our students to have smart cards so they can really actively engage in that telehealth. And our clinicians have been really proactive, securing laptops and trying to make plans ready for January so our students can be involved in placement very quickly. Our students will engage in e-learning around infection control, donning and doffing of PPE, so they will have that before they come out in January. Every student will have had an individual risk assessment in DMU, and we'll be liaising closely with clinicians to support students who maybe have identified some risks associated with COVID. PPE is an issue we've been in discussion with our placement educators around, ensuring that our students have access to PPE and keeping them as safe as possible. There obviously will be some challenges around students missing sessions, either due to illness themselves or due to maybe having to isolate or clinicians isolating. So we envisage that our students are going to have to be super flexible this year. And that's something which I think as a nation we've done very well in this pandemic, adapting and being flexible. So I'm sure that our students and our clinicians will continue to do that as we progress through the placements in January. And the next slide. So we are offering some placement educator workshops to train our placement educators. The first one is on Monday the 14th of December, and that's a 9 till 12 online session, which should give you a introduction to having a student and a refresher if you are an experienced clinician as well. And there also will be a date in January, which we will confirm closer to the time. Next slide. So yeah, so that's kind of the end of our presentation here from Ali, Lisa and myself. So as you can see, lots of changes, but it's kind of business as usual. We are continuing to support our students and engaging in these new projects and embracing all the opportunities the pandemic is bringing, really. We've adapted our placements, adapted our teaching, fantastic opportunities around telehealth. I think at DMU we've got a reputation for producing graduates who are fit for practice and ready to jump into the workplace, which I've already seen in the comments, which is lovely to see that some graduates coming out in COVID already working and making a huge impact to their team. So we hope that through all the changes we're making, we continue to produce that graduate workforce who are ready to engage in everything and make a huge contribution to the profession. So yes, any questions?
Okay, I'll just chip in there. Thanks very much to Ali, Lisa and Sam. That was really, really interesting. And I think it's great the way that the whole team has adapted and become very innovative and creative around student placements. Great to see the positive feedback in the chat. That's really helpful to know. DMU do produce wonderful students. And I think most of us probably at this presentation are ex-DMU students ourselves. So we're now to the question and answer. We're running slightly late with our time. So if I can just say now that we'll have 5 minutes now for question and answer, and then we can take them up at the very end of the session, because I don't want everyone in the second half to feel under pressure of time. So there are no questions that have come up on the chat. Are there any questions now for either Derek, who gave us that really good presentation for the RCSLT, anything for Della, or anything for the DMU team? So can I say that we'll all come back at 10 past 11, oh no, 11:15. We've got 15 minutes, haven't we? So we'll see you back here, 11:15. Enjoy the break. Thanks, guys. See you later. Okay, I think it's 11:15, guys. So we're going to get back together now as a group. I have to say that first hour has just been so delightful for me to just reconnect with everybody and just to feel that we're all back together, which is a really nice feeling for me. So thanks very much for everyone's contributions. I can't believe how many people have contributed to the whiteboard activity. That's been a really nice idea. So welcome back. Just to refer back to that activity, thanks very much for your contributions. I think what's really interesting for me is the real difference in people's comments. I've just picked up on a few. I love identifying differences and fully immersing yourself into them. Being very interested in and valuing contributions from everybody and accepting that there will be some challenges and some level of discomfort. So I think all those comments about cultural inclusivity have set the scene for our second session. And I'm now going to hand it over to Vikas, who is the Deputy Chair, and he's going to chair the next session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. And once again, welcome to everyone who is joining us for the later half of today's virtual event. I'm Vikas, the Deputy Chair for East Midlands Hub. It's been a long time since we had the opportunity to get together as a hub, and it's definitely been a challenging year for all of us, both personally and professionally. Lots has changed, and it's almost like we're living in a very virtual world at present. But we're glad to have this opportunity in form of today's event to reconnect as a hub at a regional level. So for the rest of the next hour, we have Pedrigan from the RCSLT, who is going to give us an update on RCSLT's work around diversity and inclusivity. And following that, we have Taiba, who will be talking about a new virtual platform podcast called SLT Time. If there are any questions or comments for speakers, please do put them on the chat box and they will be picked up at the end. Can I also please request that you ensure that your microphones are muted when speakers are presenting. So without any further delay, I'll hand over to Pedrigan from RCSLT.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pedrigan O'Flynn. I'm the External Affairs Assistant at the RCSLT. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to give this presentation on the work that we've been getting up to with regards to diversity and inclusivity. So this work has actually been ongoing since early 2019. It's been a part of the strategic plan since then. And then in June of 2019, we held a diversity and careers workshop in the office, if anyone remembers what that was like. Some of you might have been there, actually. And at that point, we developed kind of the key sub areas that we wanted to focus on. And we developed some focus areas for each of the groups. And then in August, we held a webinar entitled Towards a Diverse Profession, in which we updated the membership on the outcomes of the workshop and discussed some of the next steps and ways to get involved. So the key actions have kind of been taken forward then since late 2019 and then earlier this year. We created working groups in ethnicity, gender, careers promotion, and wider aspects of diversity, which covered other protected characteristics, including socioeconomic status, disability, gender identity, sexual orientation, among others. And so those meetings were kind of first held through the early part of this year. And then, of course, with the switch to everything going virtual in March, we've been holding meetings since then. Then, of course, in June of this year, May-June of this year, the murder of George Floyd and kind of the amplification of the Black Lives Matter movement really led us to reconsider our work specifically on diversity with regards to ethnicity, race, and culture. Stage, we have specifically oriented that work towards anti-racism. And at that point, we released our statement on Black Lives Matter. It's been on our website since June. I'm not sure how many of you have read it, but in that statement, we made 4 key commitments to our membership. And those 4 commitments were promoting greater visibility of Black minority ethnic members across all of our communications channels, so including our website, bulletin, e-news, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of them really. The second was to hold a profession-wide online event led by Black minority ethnic members of the profession. Our third commitment was to create a platform and a safe space for members, including SLT students, to discuss these specific issues related to race and culture. And then finally, to encourage our membership to learn and engage more through literature and research. So we've been taking forward these commitments since June, and the first one, promoting visibility, we have begun quite a few work streams in this area. So the first thing we've done is an audit of our website, specifically the images on our website, to make sure they're representative of the diversity in the profession. And corresponding edits, of course, have been made where they were not. And then in October, which was Black History Month, we publicized content specifically on our Instagram, but also across other channels, highlighting Black historical figures throughout the month. Additionally, on Instagram, we have had a Faces of SLT series highlighting member stories of how they entered the profession, as well as just kind of their stories within it. And we have partnered with SLTs of color on Instagram to improve the diversity of this project. And so if you haven't seen it, definitely go to our Instagram at RCSLT and check out some of the really incredible stories that are on there. In the July issue of Bulletin, we also began a Focus on Diversity column to highlight the stories of our Black minority ethnic members. And that has been very well received. And again, we've gotten some really great stories from members in there. And then finally, our careers promotion working group has focused on developing new materials with diversity as a key consideration. So we're really working to improve the recruitment of students from diverse backgrounds. And so particularly people from diverse ethnic backgrounds, male students, mature students as well. So we've been collecting stories and videos to share on Twitter and to share when people are going to careers fairs or speaking at schools, things of that sort. And so that has been going really well also. On the second commitment, holding a profession-wide online event, we are currently planning that, and it's likely to happen in the new year. So it's being planned by a group of RCSLT staff as well as a working group of members. So we're currently working on the pre-event learning materials, which our real goal with that is to take members on a journey of education. They can kind of have ways to see where they're at right now and really reflect on that. And then doing that in order to see what we need to do to move forward. So we will have like recorded content where people can learn kind of the basics of anti-racism, intersectionality, white privilege, things of that sort. And then at the actual event, we will include more discussions of that, as well as deciding on kind of the next steps of what to do to make the profession a more diverse and more inclusive one. So the key aims of this event, of course, to build kind of a shared knowledge base on the importance of anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion, both when relating to colleagues and in order to provide the best possible care to service users. And then really taking an audit of kind of where we're at, both individually and as teams and as a profession, and then deciding on what we need to do to get where we want to be. And of course, also figuring out where do we want to be in regards to diversity and inclusion. And then another aim is to reflect on how we can use cultural inquisitiveness to deliver better services. So we're looking at this term cultural inquisitiveness rather than cultural competency, to encourage kind of continuous learning rather than sort of just ticking a box in regards to these issues. A fourth aim is to agree on where we're at, where we need to start, and how we can really have a community that supports each other along this learning journey. And then finally, we want to figure out how to take the whole profession along with us, rather than possibly just the subset that's really, really enthusiastic and passionate about this work. We want to make sure that the whole profession is getting involved to really create profession-wide change. Our third commitment in the statement was to create a platform where people can discuss these issues openly and freely. So we've actually done this in a few ways. The first thing is our diversity pages on our website are now open access, so you no longer have to log into the website to access them. And we've included more reading and resource lists and really expanded those web pages. Additionally, we've created the Anti-Racism Online Forum that went live at the end of July. And it is located, if you haven't seen it yet, in the professional networks area of our website. And we really kind of just wanted to use this platform to create a space for members to have really open and frank discussions about race and culture, and where members who belong to Black and minority ethnic communities can really discuss their lived experiences and any challenges they've faced and find support and community. But then not only just to kind of discuss, of course, that these issues are occurring, but really work together to address them and find solutions and discuss the ways that we will create change and build education within the profession. And then finally, this is a bit broader, but we have created a document on raising concerns about racism and bullying. If you're experiencing that in your workplace or HEI, that is available on the website. I don't know if you can quite see the link in the graphic, but it's bit.ly/RCSLT anti-racism. Yeah, so that was just another way to support members who might be experiencing bullying and or racism. And it's just so that you know kind of where to go to find support and how to escalate issues if they're not being addressed. And then finally, our last commitment was to really improve the education and take members really on a learning journey together. So there are kind of three main areas in which we want to do this. First, supporting our members to be actively anti-racist. And so through the reading and resources that I've mentioned that are now on our website and the diversity pages, it's really educating on what it means to be anti-racist, how to be inclusive, kind of interrogating our own privileges, that sort of thing. And because that's obviously a key way in which we can build members of the profession into allies. Also emphasizing value-based recruitment, both for employers and universities. And then finally, implementing training on racial equity and intersectionality. So I know we're looking into doing this within the RCSLT staff, but we've also had some really great members do presentations on these topics to their team. So just kind of widening that. Additionally, promoting diversity in the workforce. So we have met with admissions tutors to discuss anti-racism, value-based recruitment, really kind of see where they're at and what they're currently doing to improve the diversity of the profession, and what they're doing to support their students from diverse backgrounds, and then looking at kind of what improvements can be made, and either by sharing best practice or by working together to find solutions. Additionally, in this area, we are currently updating the pre-registration practice-based learning guidance, and that will have a specific section on diversity. So the consultation on that just closed at the start of this month, and I believe we're looking at publication at some point in the new year. And then finally, we are also looking to just kind of signpost people to the resources that are already existing. So we're working on improving the leadership mentoring sign-up process and updating those web pages in order to better support members from diverse backgrounds to move into management positions and feel supported in doing so. And then, of course, it's really key that we're meeting the needs of our diverse populations. It's not just kind of about what's happening within the profession itself. So we're working towards this goal in a number of ways. We're working with universities to look at how students are being trained, particularly in bilingualism and cultural competence, and looking if there's any ways in which we need to improve that training. Additionally, we're working with members so that we can all understand how to develop and deliver high quality care, implement the existing guidance and see if there are any gaps in that. We are currently reviewing the bilingualism guidance as well to make sure that it is up to date and really addressing all of these issues. Our research team is also working, they're looking at the research and evidence base to meet the needs of diverse populations and seeing where there are gaps with different populations and in the resources that are available. And then finally, we really want to make sure that that the entire profession is brought along with us. And we're kind of thinking that the best way to do this will be through SENS. And so we have begun meetings with SEN leaders and representatives to figure out kind of what their role will be in sharing best practice and contributing to this learning journey. So then finally, what can you do to get involved? I think probably the biggest thing at first is just to check out the diversity pages on the website, start reading or continue reading if you're already on that education journey, and just kind of take a look at the resources that are already available. So that's a bit more on a personal level. If you would like to get involved in the broader work that we're doing, there are quite a few interested in bulletin. I've put all the contact information of who you can reach out to, but they're always looking for contributors to the Focus on Diversity column each month, as well as the features, opinions, or My Working Life to make sure that the authors are really representative of the profession. You can also join one of our diversity working groups. So what used to be the ethnicity working group at the start of the year has now become the anti-racism reference group. So absolutely join that if that's kind of the area that you're most interested in. We also have groups on gender, diversity, disability, and careers promotion. And you can join multiple groups if there are multiple areas that you're interested in. Those groups do tend to meet about quarterly for 2 hours, and we do it on Zoom, so I'm trying to be accessible as possible. And then if you haven't already, join the Anti-Racism online forum. It's really simple. If you just go to this link, it'll prompt you to log into the website and it'll take you straight to the group page so you can join. And yeah, any questions you might have, any discussions you might want to start, you can definitely do that there. If you would like to submit your story of how you entered the profession and any experiences you've had within it, you can go to this link and it'll prompt you to fill in a SurveyMonkey. And then we're turning those stories into animations to publish on Twitter. And also we've had some SLTs that have done that have gone to careers fairs or spoken at schools that have used those videos as well to really showcase the many different paths into the profession and the many different areas you can work in. So those are really helpful to promote the profession to different groups. And then finally, when registration opens in the new year for the online event, make sure to sign up. And that is a great way to, again, continue on this learning journey and find out more about how you can make a difference locally. So thank you all so much for having me. I really look forward to any questions you might have at the end of the session.
Well, thank you so much, Pedragon, for that informative session. It's great to know about the intensive work that RCSLT is doing, and I can definitely see a lot of positive comments coming in. All I would like to say is that I know we know that it's going to be a long path, but the journey sure has begun. So thank you again. Again, any questions probably will be taken at the end of session. So now I would like to hand over to our next presenter, Taiba from SLT Time.
Hello, everybody. Hi, it's so great to be here. I'm seeing lots of names that I recognise either from meeting or on Twitter. So it's really great. My name is Taiba. I am here representing SLT Time. I'm one of the co-hosts on the video series, and I'm just here talking about how we started, what we're here for, what we hope the direction the series will take. So yeah, I thought we would start off with just giving a little overview of the team. Perfect. So this is the team. I thought I'd start off with this because there's a few faces that you might see in our episodes. Usually we have 2 to 3 hosts in each episode, but there's lots of people behind the scenes as well who do a lot of work for the episodes. So this is largely, there's a few other people as well, but I'm sure you'll recognise quite a few people. So Ilya has been super active, really great on Twitter, doing the work that needs to be done. And Anne also, she's a really valued part of our team. Back in May when the murder of George Floyd happened, you know, she very rightly so kick-started a lot of the discussion on Twitter and prompted RCSLT to release a statement on it. So we really appreciate that. Thank you. So in a very blurb, very sort of simple terms, SLT Time is a podcast/video series exploring the experiences of Black, brown and ethnically diverse speech and language therapists in the UK. And we as a team are made up of both speech and language therapist students as well as clinicians with varying levels of experience. And nice is that we're bringing that to our episodes and to the content that we're releasing to ensure that our episodes cover both perspectives from students and clinicians. So I think if you keep clicking, yeah, perfect. And our episodes are also beginning to introduce sort of associated professions to SLT Time. So we're bringing in linguists and hopefully teachers and nursery managers onto the episodes to make those connections between speech and language therapy and sort of ethnic representation in terms of in other arenas as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what is SLT Time to other people? So initially it was a platform. The intention of why it was created was for it to be a platform to highlight the perspectives of speech and language therapists who have not been represented previously in the profession. So I started my speech and language therapy course in 2017, and I think on one hand, I could count within my 3 years of studying how many Black and brown speech and language therapists I either met or saw or saw pictures of in lectures. And I think that has an impact on a person, especially in thinking, you know, where am I going to fit in after I graduate? So we wanted this to be a platform to highlight our perspectives. Yeah, it also became a safe space to discuss experiences of being Black and brown and ethnically diverse in the context of university and workplace. So when people talk about microaggressions or racist experiences, it's really difficult, it's very vulnerable. And I think our episodes aim to be a place for our guests and even our hosts to be able to feel validated in terms of what they share and listened to. And I think lots of people who've come onto episodes have said, you know, they felt uncomfortable talking to supervisors or managers or lecturers, and this was supposed to highlight the issue. So it became a safe space, and I think it still is, which is really good. It has also become a source of community for SLT to Bs and NQPs who identify as Black, brown or ethnically diverse. So I know that I mentioned when I was in university, I didn't feel like there was that community. I didn't feel like there was that acknowledgement of the fact that there are brown and Black speech and language therapists, of course, but there was no network to sort of bring us together, or there was very little acknowledgement of the problem of lack of diversity. So lots of students have been reaching out, and lots of NCPs have been reaching out as well, talking about how nice it is for them to be able to tune into our episodes and have their experiences validated. And now what I think SLT time is becoming, which is really great, is it's become a resource for white speech and language therapists to use, refer to, and learn from to understand the unique experiences of their colleagues, service users, and wider community. So going back to the idea of that creating a safe space to discuss experiences of being Black and brown and mixed, is that what that happens is that it becomes sort of an invisible barrier between our sort of white colleagues who essentially do hold the power in terms of managerial positions or workplace discussions. They're not getting that pipeline of information. So now it's become a resource. And I think we've been told, SLT time has been put on reading lists at universities, and they're being mentioned at university lectures and being set as pre or post lecture consolidation of learning, which is really nice, because that's essentially what we want. We want the content that they're producing for it to be used in places where change can actually happen. So that's great. So how we started. So just as Podrigan very rightly talked about all the change that RCSLT have been implementing since May. Similarly, after the murder of George Floyd, which we saw how it incredibly it catalyzed a huge conversation, not just in our profession but worldwide, globally, and it created this dialogue of anti-Blackness and self-reflection. And many SLTs also use Twitter as a platform to open up about their own experiences of anti-Blackness and racism, whether that be as a student or even personally in their lives or in the workplace. And that was really important. So alongside this, as Podrigan mentioned just now, that there was a diversity working group. So I was part of that, and I went to a couple of the sort of meetings there, and in the background there were things that were being done, but that core group almost felt like not enough was being done or not fast enough. So we decided to sort of expand that working group and welcome in the SLTs who were talking on Twitter. For example, Ilya, she joined us, and we decided to sit and think, how are we going to use this momentum to build something, to create a platform that would sort of stay while the world sort of slowly eventually moved on, because that's just naturally how it is. Conversations fade away and the momentum is lost, but we really wanted to create something solid to maintain that. And that's how SLT time started, with the intention of exploring lived experiences of Black and brown speech and language therapists. And so this is a sort of an overview of some of the topics we've covered. So initially we started off with talking about the RCSLT BLM statement, and then one of the most episodes that we've received most feedback from is the cultural competency part 1 and part 2, especially from lecturers at university and how they've been used in university, which has been really, really great. We also did a Black History Month series highlighting Black speech and language therapists in our profession, which I really enjoyed. I think I was part of one of them with Miriam, and I really enjoyed. And microaggressions is the most recent episode. So if you haven't had a listen, there's no commitment. They're very long, 43 minutes, 56 minutes, an hour long, but usually people listen to them in their commutes or while they're doing a bit of, admin at home now. So I would definitely recommend listening to some of them, not being biased or anything, So I thought I would highlight some of the other platforms that have arisen recently, which I think I have to, because it's not just us that exist now. There's so many people out there, and one of the main beings of SLTs of Colour, #Listening is also another podcast. 3 Black speech and language therapists who are talking about their experiences in the UK, and I think definitely go and listen to them. There's also BAME 2 UK, which is looking at occupational therapists, which I think is really nice, because we are part of a much bigger sort of arena, which is other allied health professionals. So it was really nice to see the discussion expanding to other allied health professionals. There's also on Instagram the Black Nursery Manager, who is a lady who is looking at the experiences of Black families and very young sort of Black boys and girls, and providing resources and information, education about what it is, how we can help them with. And I think that is, if you work in PEDS, especially just like how I do, I think that would be a really good account to look to. And then if you go on the next slide for me, the SLTs of Colour, this is their Instagram account. What I really love is, as Podrigan mentioned earlier, the profiles that they're putting on their Instagram, just simple things like representation, having a space where we can go and see, actually, there are so many speech and language therapists that don't conform to the sort of status quo that many people coming into the profession may assume an SLT looks like. I think about how when I was applying to university, if I had sort of seen these good things, because I mean, I'm very sort of Gen Z. I was Googling and YouTubing what's a speech and language therapist, are there any videos, and there was practically very, very little out there. But now I think somebody who is applying to speech and language therapy, having seen these, it's really powerful, and I'm really happy that there are so many things out there now. So definitely I would say have a look at SLTs of Colour. Two SLTs, Angela and Hero, are behind them. They're doing amazing work, collaborating with RCSLT as well. And if you go on the next slide for me, and this is another account, there's no affiliate link, we're not getting any money from this, but I think it's really nice to outline this. There's a speech and language therapy student called Hafsa, and she's created an Etsy store, creating these really amazing vinyl stickers that people are putting on their notebooks and their laptops, and it's again continuing the momentum of increasing diversity of speech and language therapists. So I think it's nice to highlight that our students as well are doing some really great work and taking the initiative to increase the representation of speech and language therapy. And the movement across the pond, so there's a lot of things similarly to what we're doing in America. So particularly the 8% SLTs, they're a podcast who existed before us, actually, and I like their name because 8% of speech and language therapists in America are Black, and so I thought it was a very clever name, and they're doing some really great podcasts and publishing resources as well. So yeah, definitely check them out. They are mainly Instagram accounts as well, but I know they have Twitter accounts. So yeah, definitely have a look at them. So the future plans, where are we going? So I think we are now ready to open up the space to people who can bring about actually substantial change. For example, our white colleagues. So we're opening up the discussion, introducing sort of guests to come onto our episode now, to sort of action plan how things can change. So we know that conversations are happening within team meetings now and within trust, which is really, really important. We're also now carrying out research to support the content of our episodes by releasing surveys or questionnaires for our listeners to fill out, things about experiences. In our microaggressions episode, we asked for people to send in their experiences, and now we're going to be starting to collect some data as well. And we've also started to create packages and lectures offered to universities around the country for CPD and learning as part of teaching modules. So I know Ilya and Veronica have, I believe, Reading University and Sheffield as well. So that's something that's being offered UK-wide as well, which is really great. And finally, now we're starting to create a finance and funding plan to support the evolution of the podcast. So things like making it accessible to people by having subtitles. Unfortunately, subtitles either takes a huge amount of time or a bit of money. And because we're all either full-time students or full-time speech and language therapists, it's sort of important to start thinking about a bit of finance to fund us in order to be able to do that effectively. We're also thinking about collaborating with charities in the UK whether that be as a sort of a mentoring sort of youth charities that are looking into career services, or donations through any funding that we receive. And also obviously creating CPT packages, that's going to be creating a bit of finance as well for us. And how the East Midlands Hub can help us. So really, in essence, just listening, liking and sharing our episodes can create some real traction and reach students. Especially, we know every year there are students who are signing up to Twitter and joining the sort of Twitter sphere, and it's really important that they are exposed to what we're doing or what our friends are doing. Suggesting topics you'd like to see being covered as well. As we open up the space to lots more people, we'd love to hear what you would like to hear from us or see from us, or at least get us to organise if we can't organise it ourselves. So I think that would be great. Some suggestions of topics. Taking part and sharing our surveys on Twitter. So for us to be able to collect a substantial amount of data, I think we'd like lots and lots of people to take part in them. You know, some of our surveys are either specific to, you know, Black, brown experiences, but there are also a number of them that are going to be focused on the general experience of speech and language therapists. So that's quite important. And discussing the content with students and in workplaces. This is one of the things that I'm most passionate about. Is this is just simply another podcast if it's not being taken and ran with in spaces that substantial change can happen with. So ensuring your students are aware of the podcast and encouraging to listen into it, simply to learn and understand the experiences of their colleagues and the service users that they're going to be working with, and in workplaces as well, letting your colleagues know that this is existing. And also merchandise is coming soon. So in terms of sort of that funding and that finance as well, we are releasing some merchandise, and so supporting that would be really great for us to be able to, it would help us to improve the podcast as well. And so that's it from me today. Thank you very much for having me. It was a big privilege coming on here and representing SLT time. So thank you all.
Thank you, Taiba. I mean, all I can say is what a great initiative by you all, you know, creating sort of like a safe platform from SLT and SLT students, you know, from diverse backgrounds to share their experiences. And like you said, for wider SLT community to learn from each other. And I think giving everybody now that opportunity to being really part of this momentum. So, you know, really great work. And I think we have a lot of positive comments coming up from everybody, you know, and is really appreciating all the work that you guys are doing. So yeah, thank you so much. So now I would like to hand over to Carol for any question and answers, and then request her to bring the event to a close. So over to you, Carol.
Okay, thank you, Vikas. I feel that we've had such an interesting morning so far. It's been absolutely fabulous. And again, my thanks to the last two presenters. At the moment, I'm just looking through the chat on the side there. The one question I had, which was for Padrigan, was just, do you have any chance yet of knowing the date that the online platform may occur, the online event? I know you said to look out for it, but is there any idea of when it might happen?
We don't have a date yet,
Okay.
but looking into the spring, I would say.
Okay, that's lovely. I shall keep my eyes peeled. And does anybody else have any questions for either of the two presenters we've listened to for the second session? Just give you a couple of minutes in case anyone has anything. Okay, so I'll assume then, therefore, that the question and answer session can end. So we've finished a little bit early, which gives me time just to close the bits that I want to say. I think, from my perspective, it's been the first one that I've chaired, and I'm just so excited. I'm all quite goosebumpy and feeling really excited about the future, because I think the fact we've all reconnected as a hub is very exciting. I think we should all be very, very proud of ourselves for getting through a really difficult time in our lives. And we've come out with some real positives in our profession, particularly having just heard the SLT time one as well. There's so much going on that's really positive. So I'm looking forward to starting again next year in 2021, our plans as a hub are that we will collaborate more closely with West Midlands. And the plan is that possibly in February next year, we will do another event. I think because of lockdown, the chances are it will still be a virtual event. But having said that, the virtual event has been very successful. I can see there's a couple of questions coming in, so I'll stop talking in a moment. So we will put out an advert about the next event, but I'm just going to go back into a question for Derek. I'm just going to put my glasses on. So let me just go back and see if I've missed any. I think this is the only one that's come in. Let me just have a look. So the question for Derek, if Derek can hear me,
Yeah.
the question, you can probably see it in the chat.
I can, yeah, that's fine.
Are you able to answer that? Thank you.
Yeah, there's two different things here. So the first is that there's been kind of a standing group of RCSLT members who were involved in COVID-19 care, and the membership of that has moved and the topics of that have moved, and they discuss whatever is live at the moment, and that's included the symptom stuff. But we'll certainly make sure that the specifics that you mention are on their agenda going forward. The second is that across the health system, long COVID working groups are being set up right now for NICE, for NHS England, and what we're doing there is trying to ensure that we have SLT representation on those relevant groups, and that communication and swallowing are part of their agendas. So yeah, yes, but I will make sure that it's specifically highlighted to the RCSLT group. We are also trying to make sure that we have our foot in the relevant door for all of the system groups which are currently being set up.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Claire, is that okay? Does that make sense? Okay, and there's another question which I think is for Taiba in relation to SLT time. A question saying, how do you see the postcard series going into the wider field?
Wider field in terms of professions that are outside of speech and language therapy, I'm assuming. Yeah, I think collaborating with sort of occupational therapists coming in, and physiotherapists as well. So as I mentioned, there are other platforms that have started coming up, and I think in the future we'd really like to create a network with them to understand how in their professions, you know, what's going on, to share what's going on with our profession, because ultimately, you know, we're not the only profession that is kickstarting this conversation and making substantial change. So I think that is how I would like to do that. So yeah.
Okay, I'm assuming there's no more questions. I'll just give it a little space again in case anybody else wants to add anything, because I know you need a minute or two to type them. Okay, obviously if something comes in the next minute, that's fine. So it's just to say thank you. I've got some personal thanks to people who supported me. I couldn't have done it without you all. Vikas, as Deputy Chair, thanks very much. Thank goodness you can do Twitter, because I'm absolutely rubbish at that. So thanks for keeping the Twitter feed going while we're doing this event. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much to all our presenters. It's been fascinating, a really invigorating morning. It's got me all excited again about our profession. And also thank you to the support we've had from Kaylee. Couldn't have done it without you, Kaylee. Thanks very much for all the IT support. And as a final thing, I'm going to pass you back to Della, and she will close the session for us. So here, over to you, Della. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carol. And I couldn't agree more, really. What an exciting, inspiring and inclusive morning we've had. And a special shout out to Taiba. That was great presentation, and so excited to see how that work all progresses. And yeah, it was brilliant. So thank you. I said at the very beginning that members are the RCSLT, you are the RCSLT, and what my reflection is on these last 2 hours is the future of the RCSLT is safe in your hands. This is brilliant going forwards, and this is a really good moment for me to introduce to you all Mary Heritage, who I know has been able to join us. So as I step down in a couple of weeks' time, Mary will be stepping into my feet, and I'd just like to welcome and introduce Mary for those of you who haven't met her, and hand over to her for the final few words. So thank you very much, everyone. It's been a great morning.
Thank you, Della, and hello everyone. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to join you for the whole session. I came in at the beginning of Tabar's amazing presentation about SRT tea time. That is so inspiring and says so much about things that are important to me as I come into this amazingly privileged role of chair of RCSLT, about diversity, importantly about inclusiveness, and about member engagement and how much has happened in this year to for the voice of all of us and many of you to really make a difference to our professional body and our profession. Just to introduce myself, Mary Heritage, I work in Derbyshire. I'm an AHP lead there. Always very proud to be a speech and language therapist, and RCSLT is the place where I get to act out my profession nowadays. I've spent the whole of my career in the East Midlands, so this is really feels like coming home. I live in Nottingham and have done since I graduated from Leicester Polytechnic, or De Montfort University as it now is. I've worked in Nottingham and I've worked in Derbyshire for many years. So I hope that during my 2-year term as chair, I'm going to continue a close link with the East Midlands Hub, as I know Della has. There's a really strong legacy from East Midlands managers and our impact at every level, members and managers in the professional body, and I'm aiming to pick up that baton from Della and continue the great work you've done, Della. So please keep in touch. Please keep engaged. Please keep this hub going. It will go from strength to strength, I think, if you can maintain that, Carol and Vikas, through a year like 2020. And I think the last thing I want to say is thank you, every single one of you, for everything you've done this year, whether it's just surviving in your families, whether it's working from home, whether it's in the front line, in communities. You've done amazingly, and we all have. It's been the most incredible year that I know we'll look back on and wonder how we did what we did. The fact that RCSLT has gone from strength to strength is down to every single one of you as members, and we're looking forward to happier and just as strong times ahead in 2021. Thank you, Carol. Great morning. Well done.
Thank you. It's been a delight. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks for your contributions, and we look forward to 2021. Take care. Bye.
Bye.